Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Inlay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and we have another PPC, a new PPC candidate with us today, Mr. Logan Araujo. How are you, Logan?
I'm good, Payman. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
No, thanks for coming on. You're looking pretty sharp. I like the shirt, I like the hat, but I especially like the gaming headset.
Thank you very much. Yeah, surround
Yeah,
sound.
you're not a candidate that messes around.
Yeah,
Logan, why don't we get started? Maybe tell us a little about yourself. Where were you born? Where were you raised? And then all the way up to why you decided to run.
yeah, sure thing. I was born here in my home, the riding I'm a candidate for in Streetsville, Mississauga. I'm 22. I was born in 2001 here at the local hospital, and I've been here my whole life. Grew up in Streetsville. I went to Divine Mercy Elementary School and St. Aloysius Gonzaga High School. And then I decided to pursue a Bachelor of Commerce degree at McMaster University, which was a bumpy ride. It wasn't my favorite, to be honest, but just graduated. And a little bit about my time there is it was it's not exactly what I was expecting. It was very like kind of almost low quality education that you could find better and cheaper online. So it kind of turned me off of the whole experience. It's not something I would even recommend for my kids at this point. I just feel like the whole system is kind of degraded. And I was also kicked out because I refused to get my COVID vaccine. And it was online. It was online winter courses. They kicked me out of my online classes because I wasn't vaccinated. It didn't make too much sense to me, but we got through it. I got graduated with the Bachelor of Commerce, and yeah, over my time there is really where I got into politics. There's a lot going on in the United States with the presidential elections there, and with COVID, I just got super into it. I started following everything, and at that point, I was introduced to the PPC and Maxime Bernier, and I was always kind of unsatisfied in Canada with the Conservative Party. It's just they didn't really go far enough to really be truly conservative in my eyes, and they've kind of went super centrist. So um, once I found out about that, I did a little bit of work during COVID, closer to 2021, with the PPC. In the earlier days, I organized an event in Mississauga with the guy named Corey from PPC, and yeah, I was introduced to the party immediately. I wanted to get involved, and I knew that was the place.
So you're in university in Canada. You're following U.S. politics and you're supporting the PPC. Were you basically a social pariah?
Yeah, basically, that's part of it. Is it's not easy to make friends if you're even like, if you're not a communist at McMaster University, it's not easy to make friends. Everyone there is so liberal. I remember I took a couple of classes. I took a socioeconomics class. Briefly took a politics class before I decided like I just needed to drop out because but in my sociology class, I remember on the first day we had a full auditorium of people, probably like 400 people in this massive auditorium, and the teacher got our sociology teacher got a trash bin and said, everyone take out a piece of paper and crumple it up, and we all throw a piece of paper at the trash bin at the bottom of the auditorium, and nobody knows what's going on. It was just like kind of fun. You're aiming at the basket. And she's like, well, the people at the front of the class, you see, they had an easier time getting it in the basket. Who do you think they represent in society? And like almost like if I was in a room full of droids, like it was like when we were in church, like when you have a set response, everyone said straight white men, like all in unison, like everyone knew the punchline, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, and then in that class we had to write like a final paper, kind of like to sum up everything we learned, and we had like set topics about like garbage, like like basically topics that you can't even have a moderate opinion on. It's like why indigenous people deserve this or that. It's like, so I wrote about the wage gap. I said, you know what, I'm not picking her selected topics, and this was in second year university, and I went really in on the wage gap. I got a 50 on that paper. I thought it was one of the best papers I've ever wrote, but I got a 50 because the prof was so liberal. And I challenged it. I said, you know what? I want you to look over this grade. I think you missed. Um, I think it's a little better than a 50. She looked at it, gave me a 46, and then I
What?
passed. I went down, so I passed that class with a 50% on the dot.
Yeah, this is a future Supreme Court Chief Justice right there,
Yeah,
professor.
exactly. Yeah.
Uh, Tell me, how did you get? I'm always fascinated because when I was in university, I was in the STEM field, computer science, and I was focused. I was interested in only two things: working my ass off and meeting girls. Those were the only two things. So it blows me away. How does a university student get interested in politics?
Well, I don't know. I guess I wasn't really chasing girls. I've had a girlfriend since high school, so 6 years. Wasn't really chasing girls, and the school was just so easy compared to what you're probably used to in STEM. Like business is just, it's so incredibly easy to get a Bachelor of Commerce degree, partially because it's just like these institutions have degraded so much, and they've tailored part of the course to make it easier to pass for international students. Like at least 50% of my class, my graduating class, was international students who some of which spoke little to no English. Like that's not even like I've had people in my group that don't actually speak English, and I think they've really made it easier and more appealing for international students to come and just get the slip of paper and pay the institution a ton of money. But yeah, for me in commerce, I had so much time. It was just so easy. I never really picked up a book or anything because it was like kind of just draw inside the lines. And we learned the same thing like multiple times because it's a 4 year program, but there's only so much you can teach about general business, right? Like so I feel as if I learned the same thing multiple times and it could have been condensed into 2 years, but they wanted to milk it for as much as they could.
They padded the hell out of the course.
Yeah, exactly.
What about specifically the People's Party? How did you get linked up with them? Was it through the university or through a friend?
No, it wasn't through a friend. It was just during COVID. They were, I must have stumbled across it on the internet. Like I wasn't following politics when the party started in 2018, really. I wasn't like super into it at that point, but I think I was more into the States politics in 2018. But I must have come across it on the internet somewhere during COVID, and then just I was like a big, anti-vaxxer. I was a big like I don't want to take any of this stuff. I don't like wearing masks in public. I don't want to see my local businesses get shut down because, Costco's allowed to stay open and these businesses have to close. I just didn't like any of it. I didn't like the way that Doug Ford handled it. I didn't like the way that Trudeau handled it. I hated it all. So I guess the PPC was the only party that was taking an opposition stance to this, saying like we need to have a realistic approach to this because it's not what the media is making it out to be.
Uh, what about the Conservative Party? You mentioned that they were too centrist for you. I think those are the words you used. What specifically about them did you find off-putting?
Yeah, it's off-putting to me that like maybe one day it'll change, maybe it'll return to an actual opposition party, and hopefully it does, or hopefully even better the PPC takes over for them. But it just to me it seems it's obvious what they're doing. They're just trying to win. They're not actually principled at all. They don't have any like real platform. They're very wishy-washy. They'll basically just let the polls kind of lead their policy. And what they'll do before the PPC, now they kind of have to watch out, but they will just go 1 inch to the right of the Liberal Party and they'll say, oh, we're opposition, we're opposition. And they know that if they go 1 inch to the right of the Liberal Party, they'll capture all of the voters, like right of the spectrum. They'll capture people like me and you if there were no People's Party, right? Unless you become a disgruntled voter, they know that that's the best strategy to win. That is just to be so centrist, just 1 inch to the right of the Liberal Party, and it just that's not what I think is right. I'm more of an idealist. I just think I just prefer the party that has they have a platform, they have policies, they have ideas, and they stand behind them because they think they're right.
So I get that you're saying you're an idealist. Was there ever a moment when you thought maybe there's a chance I can get into the Conservative Party and change it from the inside out?
Yeah, I thought about it, but the barrier to entry is much higher for the Conservative Party, and it just a lot of people. You're competing with a lot more people, and I'm not very experienced, to be honest. I don't have a lot that would make me an attractive candidate to the Conservative Party, but regardless, I think the PPC is the right place for me because I would be soon kicked out of the Conservative Party for some of my views, I think.
Really? Share your views. Which one of them would you
Well, I
say that
mean,
get you kicked
I'm
out?
I'm very like anti-immigration. I also I don't believe that the government should be anywhere close to as big as it is. And the Conservative Party is very much pro-immigration, and they maybe Pierre is a little bit better on economic policy, but it's still like a lot of bloating. Like there's a lot of intervention with the Conservative Party, and it just they don't do enough really for me. They don't take it far enough.
Well, let's launch into that. We're gonna get into immigration later, but what would good immigration policy be for you?
Well, for me, I think it should be the way it was way back when, is like this country, the demographic is shifting very rapidly, and we're only really taking in immigrants from a select few countries like India, China, South Asia, and for me, that's not really diversity. That's like taking in 100 Indians is not like diversifying the country at all. It's just fragmenting it, and it's displacing people that have been here for very long times. Like my family, it's like the acceptable immigration would be to take from people all over the world, people who are skilled immigrants. But even that, I don't even think that they're skilled immigrants that have these skills that can't be taught to Canadians here in our country. So I don't know exactly what role immigration should have in Canada, but right now the way it is, it's completely insane to me. It's like no other countries do this. It's Western countries, Western European, North American countries that are, you know, guilted into taking so many people from all over the world and having diversity and multiculturalism. But no other countries, like China doesn't do this, Japan doesn't do this. Other places, try a Muslim country, they don't take immigrants. It's like it would be a foreign concept for them, for someone to tell them, oh, you need to be more diverse and less Muslim and less Arab. Like would be like foreign to them. They wouldn't even understand what you're saying. And now it's just gotten so out of hand for us in Canada.
What about if we talk about numbers? These numbers just keep changing because the Liberal government lies so much. But I think it was about 2 million people they brought in last year. What would
Yeah.
be an acceptable number, putting aside that we probably need a moratorium for the next few years? But if you could have a time machine, you could go back to 2015. What would be the immigration targets for you?
Yeah, I think back in 2015, the population was probably around 30 million or so. And I'd say maybe like less than 1% of the population should be immigrants per year, because even that over time, like if you're only adding to your population based on immigration, I'd say around, maybe honestly, I think 100,000 for me would be like a good number, and that's like including, permanent residents and students and foreign laborers. Like I just think we need to combine all those programs and say 100,000 people can come in, from all over the world, not just from India, not just from China or wherever. It has to be from all over. It has to be a balance, right?
Let's take a walk through history. The I think 64 Bicultural and Bilingual Commission, and then it led to Mulrooney's Multiculturalism Act. Is this sort of like the original sin that snowballed into this chaos?
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that, but I do understand that that was basically what set the precedent for kind of the almost displacement of Canadians. And multiculturalism is supposed to be, our strength. And I do think that that kind of laid the groundwork. I do think that one thing led to another. And maybe at the time when they were thinking that, they thought it was like this great thing. They didn't foresee what we see now in our city centers. They didn't foresee that it would be this way. But that definitely set the ball in motion. That was like, you know, since 1965, our demographic of our country has changed tremendously. It's changed like crazy. Now it's, back then it was probably under 10%, probably under 5%. In 60s, definitely under 5% of people were immigrants, like I guess we're all, sort of immigrants, but they were less than 5% were visible minorities, and now it's probably closer to 30. I have no idea what the number is. It's going up exponentially now, but it definitely set the ball in motion.
Are you noticing? I'm noticing a massive amount of like racial division and civil strife in Canada. Are you noticing this on social media?
On social media, yeah, definitely, but even more so in person. It's like people that come in large numbers very quickly like this, they used to have to assimilate because they used to go to a community that was Canadian people. They had to assimilate. Their children were going to school with Canadians. Everything was based around our culture, so they had to assimilate into that. And now, when I go, 20 minutes up from Mississauga, or even some places in Mississauga to Brampton, it's like they come here from India, for example, and they'll send their kids to school with all Indian kids, and all of the families are Indian. So all of the cultures stay the same. Nothing actually changes and tailors itself towards Canadian culture. They aren't assimilating anymore. Some of them don't even learn to speak English. Some of them have very limited English speaking ability, and that happens in Europe too. And that's just the way it is. It's just like you have these sections, these like divisions, like segregations, almost naturally happening in Brampton and Surrey, and now so in Mississauga, where it's almost like becoming another country. It's like unrecognizable. The place down the road from me, Ridgeway Plaza, it's called. It just opened up. It was just constructed, and it's filled with pretty much only shawarma places. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it's actually probably 80% of the stores there are shawarma places, and some of them don't even have English writing on the on the storefront. They have it in like another language, in Arabic.
I remember I did a summer study abroad program in Bonn, Germany, and we used to joke the population was 300,000 and there were 600,000 donar stores. So
There's
this was
600,000
happening.
what?
Donar, like donar kebab shawarma places.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it was the same problem there.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it's very bad in some of those European countries.
it's this kind of okay. Why don't we go in that direction? How much of what is going on in the UK right now do you think is? I mean, it's pretty. I'm spoon feeding you a question, but how much of that is based on the racial divisions?
Well, yeah, all of it is based on racial division, but maybe it won't be as severe when it happens here because the UK is a country that's much older and has people that are native to that place for like, generations, like 10 generations. Canada doesn't have that. We've only been a country for 150 years. So maybe people won't be as outraged as they are in the UK, but it's the same story. It's the people that are English, like real English people, like with English DNA, are being displaced and invaded in their home country that their family has been in for 10 generations. And I have nothing against any of these minority groups. I actually like Indian people and Arabic people, but I wouldn't wish that on anybody. On no country would I wish to self-destruct by allowing in droves of another culture to displace them in their homeland, in their native country. I just think it's wrong. And the English people, I guess, were distracted while it was all going on. They were distracted by soccer and bread and circus and stuff that doesn't matter. But now they look around, it's like they're having this eureka moment. Like, migrants, people who aren't English, are coming into our country, invading us. Single military age males are coming in and it's like stabbing children. Like, it's they're having this moment now all at once, and same with Ireland, and I think it's going to happen to everywhere, every Western country that's embraced this sort of multiculturalism idea.
I look at the UK and the people that are attacking the. I'm just going to call them like the white British people. Um, they themselves are white. Like the leadership that brought this upon or unleashed it upon the UK, they're white. And I look at Canada, it's the same thing. Like the actors, you had Justin Trudeau now, you had Harper, you had Mulrooney, you had Chrétien, and then you had Diefenbaker before. Well, obviously, Pierre Elliott Trudeau is the granddaddy of this. Like, what is it about these people that think that? Why do they hate their own culture so much?
I have no idea the answer to that question. I mean, I've heard a whole lot of crazy theories, but the truth is, I just don't know why these people. Trudeau is like a white Canadian guy. Like, I have no idea why he would want to deliberately bring out the destruction of his country and his culture. I just it's mind-boggling almost. But it's not just him, right? It's there's so many places where the leaders are like ethnically of that country and they're just selling their people and culture out. I don't know how somebody could do that. That's like so terrible to me. But he definitely knows. It's not like he's just doing it by accident and he pats himself on the back and thinks that he's making the country better. He knows that it's making the country worse. He's a smart guy, I think, Trudeau, and I have no idea what has motivated him to do this. Maybe he wants power, like maybe it's for power. Maybe he thinks importing people will kind of destroy the cultural roots and like the heritage and people's pride in their nation. It'll make them easier to control, and maybe it's a power thing. I have no idea. I'm curious to know what you think.
My theory is that all of this crap comes out of the urban centers. You got the breakup of the family unit. Everybody moves to the cities because you got your bars and you got your clubs and your $100 steak, and nothing else really matters. And everything is transient. So you live in an apartment building you rent for a year and you move on. It doesn't matter if the guy next to you is John Smith or Mohammed Abdul. Like, you don't care. And as long as the girls that you're picking up, like, you don't care if it's from the girls from South America, from East India, from Bangladesh. Like, something has gone terribly wrong with these city centers, and it just so happens that the people that they bring in, whatever their background, they get packed into these city centers. So I think we've hit critical mass of wokeism.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely very unique to city centers. It's like nobody is like it's almost like people in rural areas in Alberta, like they might not even know what it looks like in some of these like city centers in BC and Ontario. But if they knew, I think they would vote PPC or they would be outraged because it's so weird how it's I guess it's contained to city centers, but a lot of the bad things in life are contained to city centers, I guess.
There's just it's a division that's resulting in two different sort of cultures. So the urban centers, when you compare it to the countryside, they might as well be two different people. When the Freedom Convoy happened, I don't know what clicked in me that I sided with the the sort of the working class grassroots movement. But every single person in downtown Vancouver and in the suburb I was in, they bought the narrative that these guys were terrorists. They're going to Ottawa to overthrow the government.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's different. It's like they're overwhelmingly liberal, and same with the states. It's like you have the cities. They just almost have a completely different mindset and completely different culture than people in rural America and rural Canada.
I just drove across the U.S. from Vancouver to Florida, and I made sure to avoid all the big cities. But it's pretty good when you're going across. Like, you hit these really hardcore red states, and everyone's kind of normal.
Yeah,
Soon as you get to like Seattle or Portland, it's just horrible.
exactly. Yeah, I would never want to go to Portland or Seattle. That would suck. But yeah, I love driving through the states. I love going through these rural parts of the United States, and these people are just, very content with the simple life, just having a family, having some property, and having their guns, and it's very inspiring to me going through there.
One thing I noticed, I think I was in Montana. I was going too fast, and the cops pulled me over. They've done this a couple of times. They're so polite. Hello, sir. You know why I pulled you over, sir? I'll let you off with a warning. Have a nice day, sir. Canada, oh my lord, instant ticket, and then they want the confession too. It's like, you were speeding. I'm saving your life. I'm like, buddy, my tax dollars pay for you. Piss off.
Yeah, you're a big speeder then, eh?
Yeah. I mean, who's gonna go the speed limit when it's 80?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh. Anyway, we got sidetracked there. My question about immigration: do you think that there is a non-social issue, like a financial issue, where they've mismanaged the economy, and to finance the welfare state, they got to somehow bring in these immigrants that have more money?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially with CPP, is the way it's set up is very similar to a Ponzi scheme. The CPP constantly needs a flow of immigrants and an increasing young workforce to pay off the benefits of the people who have retired. It's like it's a standard Ponzi scheme. It doesn't. My friend works for CPP. I can't name him, but we argue about this all the time. It's exactly the same as a Ponzi scheme to me. Maybe I'm missing something, but they need immigrants to come and pay into the CPP so they can pay off people that have been paying in their whole lives. So yeah, there is some financial gain in importing these immigrants for those massive pension plans, but also for corporations. Corporations benefit largely off of mass immigration because they have a constantly never ending increase in the supply of labor, which, when the supply of labor is higher than the demand, which is when they offer jobs. If they offer jobs and there's many people that want to fill that job, they can offer very poor wages. They can offer poor working conditions. They can have a bad contract, basically, which is favored towards them. If they didn't have that option, if they didn't have foreign workers pouring into this country, they would have to say, you know what, this job hasn't been filled in 2 weeks. We need to make this more attractive to the people that are already here. We need to raise the price. We need to give better hours. We need to do something that give them more benefits or something to appeal to attract a candidate. And this whole idea that I saw a video of him the other day saying, we need to grow by doing this. We're growing the country. Every single person that can't fill a job by a Canadian, we need to import someone ASAP. And it's like, first of all, you're keeping wages low by doing that. You're making it harder for people to earn a living wage. And second of all, you're being offensive to Native Canadians, saying that they can't fill roles. Like, well, Canadians can do anything. Like we're fine. We don't need immigrants to come and save us. We can have engineers and doctors and lawyers. Like, we can train people in our own institutions to do these things, and we don't like need people. So I find it offensive when he says that, but yeah, there is a big financial impact. Immigration has a big impact on these financial sort of things.
Now, I can almost respect these corporations that want foreigners to come in because they're just thinking about their profit margin. Okay, I can understand, maybe not respect, but I understand that. What I don't understand is, why is the government subsidizing the wages of these temporary foreign workers to the tune of like 50%? So if you need to give such massive subsidies to make your economy work, that tells me that Canada's economy is even more broken than we thought.
Yeah. I mean, the government, the fact that they're getting involved in that at all is completely disrupting like the natural free market of the labor markets. They're completely disrupting everything. And it's because there's just way too much intervention in these markets. There's way too much government interference. Like, sometimes things have to go down. They just want to always see growth and always see economic expansion, but it's just nominal when they print money and when they like pour, dump workers in and then subsidize their wages. They're just nominally showing that the economy is okay. But if you go to the grocery store, or if you like just talk to your neighbors, like, it's not that good. Well, like, you need to just sometimes let recessions happen. It's like you're in BC. You understand that like um, the forest fires, sometimes they need to burn. Otherwise, if you just keep preventing them from burning, you keep putting them out early, there's just this massive buildup of debris and dry logs at the bottom of the forest, and it'll cause an even worse fire in the future. And that's what the principle is when they're doing this sort of intervention, is they're kicking the can down the road. They're just pushing this collapse. They're just propping everything up with government intervention and money printing and foreign laborers. But eventually it's just not going to work anymore. Eventually it's going to just spin out of control.
Okay, I have a question related to that. Banking, central banking. I break it up into three groups. So on the one hand, you could have absolutely no bank, and if the government wants to build a dam or anything, they have to collect the taxes from the people first. Another one is what we used to have before Pierre Elliott Trudeau, where the government is a central bank and just gives interest-free loans. And then what we have now is the government goes to commercial banks, and when they get a loan, they have to pay an interest on it. I'm dropping this on your lap, but do you have any opinion on which one you prefer?
I actually would rather no central bank. I would rather the government they collect tax dollars and that's what they have to spend. They don't get more than that without raising taxes or without doing something like that. I just think that, the whole central banking system has allowed them to amass so much power and so much control. I think it would just be way better if they have a budget, they calculate how much tax they need to collect for that year to pay off that budget. Everybody knows what to expect and that's it. That's all they get to spend, and it would keep the government limited. It would keep them controlled.
No, I love your suggestion. The challenge with that is that the government's grown so big. I almost wonder if we've reached, like peak communism, where where like they want to get votes, so they like retroactively give a raise to law enforcement and to doctors and healthcare workers.
Yeah, it just like yeah, it's a lot of central planning. It's a lot of socialism and welfare and grants and yeah, it is definitely traveling towards communism. It's just the government is involved in everything now. It's like in a lot of cases, two consenting adults just can't shake hands and do business without having to go through some sort of bureaucratic red tape. Like if a local brewer is making alcohol or making beer and wants to sell it to another consenting adult, they can't just shake hands and like do business anymore. It's like you have to go through the government and say, "Oh, I need a license to do this." It's like you need a license to fish now. You can't even fish and like sell your fish. You can't even run a lemonade stand without going through the government. And it's just like, yeah, they've amassed so much control, and we're tumbling towards kind of central planning communist nightmare if this trend continues.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. Let's pivot over to the housing. What do you think is driving the high cost of housing?
Well, yeah, it's tied into the number one issue. The number two issue of housing is tied into immigration because, again, as with everything, there's a supply and demand curve that behind all of these things, behind the price of everything, there's a supply and demand intermingling, and that the supply of housing does not go up as fast as the demand for housing, which is the population. When immigrants come in droves, it's the demand for housing increases, and we can never keep up with that. So the way what we've done since our population is growing so fast, we've just made homes smaller. We've made apartment buildings. We've made things that people are even less able to afford. Like back in the 60s, you could buy a house after like 3 months of working. You could just like buy a house or something because there was no red tape. It was easy to just get a builder to build the house, and that was that. But now it's like you have to have like a mortgage to afford even like a very small condo. It's like people have no like purchasing power. It's like shrinkflation in the housing economy. It's like everybody is getting less, but they're paying more and working harder to get less. And it's because it's mainly because the demand for housing is increasing rapidly, and the supply of housing is not increasing a fraction of that. It's not increasing half as much. So the price is just driven forever up. It's just never going to end until we clamp down on immigration.
What about how are you going to educate your constituents that government is the cause of this, so government can't be the solution? I'll give you an example. Actually, you just gave an example. They're rezoning in West Vancouver and BC. There's no housing. They're like, you know what? We'll just quadruple the zoning. They'll just upzone it. So as you mentioned, everything is smaller, and people are like, "Oh, yay! We're going to vote for this government because they're doing something." How are you going to get a message to resonate with your voters?
Well, I think the main point is pointing out their track record. Like we went like take the peak of Canada, I would say, I don't know, maybe it's like in the 50s. That was like when obviously we didn't have the technology we have today, but like you could just work a small amount, you could have a car, you could have a family, you could have a house, you could afford to eat nice food, like steak and eggs like every morning. That was like the classic. Now you get like garbage food for more money. And you look from that point onwards, from the 1950s until where we are now, it's like life has gotten worse, and the government has also gotten a lot larger. There's like a strong correlation there. The government is growing, we're getting less. The government's getting more, and we're getting less. And corporations are getting bigger, and the person, the average individual, is getting stomped. It's like we have to pay a 30-year mortgage to own a house. Most people will have to pay off their house over the course of 30 years. And you're paying interest on that for 30 years. Back then in the 50s, when, it was up to the people, it was a much freer society. The government was a lot smaller. It was like you work for a year, you just buy the house. And like that's that. You're not paying interest. You're not like a slave to your debtors or to your creditors. And yeah, that would be my number one point is just like look at it over a large period of time and look at anywhere where it has an overwhelming government control, like any sort of communist country, it just doesn't work.
What about let's pivot over to censorship. I always get these numbers wrong. I think it's Bill C-63 or 69, the Online Harms Act. What's your view on those? And like how do we repeal that?
Um, yeah, I mean, how do we repeal it? I guess I don't even know the process of repealing a bill. I guess it's the same as passing a bill, right? It's just you kind of have to vote it out. But like, I don't know how anybody could really support that. Like, if you really understand what they're passing in the House of Commons, like something that limits your free speech, like especially on the internet, like you can't even say things, like you can't like tweet whatever you want to say. It's just like, how could you support that? How could you support the government limiting what you say in person or on the internet? It's like, to me, it doesn't make sense that anybody would support that. Even if like you're a liberal person, why would you support them having control over what you say on the internet? It's so bizarre to me that anybody would argue in favor of that, as unless you're a government official who's looking for more control.
Yeah, it kind of, I find it amazing as well. I think what they've done is, first of all, people are on the brink of starvation. Like they're just trying to survive. Secondly, we took our eye off the ball. We just figured, put the government on cruise control and we'll go to our backyard barbecues. And third, their messaging is really spot on. Like I noticed this with the Online Streaming Act. Like the NDP are saying, "Oh, these guys are tax evaders. They have to pay their fair share." And the Liberals are saying, "We want a level playing field, whatever the hell that means." And the Conservatives, they're like the useless cousin. They didn't even know how to fight back.
Yeah.
So as you said earlier, like we essentially didn't have an official opposition.
Yeah, and there's definitely this disconnect where a lot of people don't even really like pay attention with what's going on with what's being passed, and like I don't know if they don't care, but I think if most people just paid attention and they knew some of the bills that are passing and they understood them, they would not support them. They would say, you know what, we don't want that. And yeah, it just goes to show you that the MPs in Parliament right now don't really represent the people that elected them. They represent corporations and special interests and lobby groups, but that's about it.
One last question on the issue of policies, war, specifically the war in Ukraine. What do you think Canada's policy should be in that conflict?
I think we should just not be involved in foreign wars at all. I think foreign wars don't benefit us. We need to look at what benefits our country because we're a nation. We're not part of some global group. We're not like, we are a separate and distinct country, and we should do only what's in our best interest, not the interests of other countries. So I don't think getting involved in a war with Ukraine and Russia is in our interests at all. I don't see how that benefits us at all. I think that's unfortunately, it's sad. I know a lot of people from Ukraine live here, and Russians too, I guess. But for Canadians, it doesn't make sense to involve ourselves in that war.
And as we're rounding up the episode, do you have any final words of optimism for Canada?
Yeah, I do. I think there is a chance. I think there is this conservative swing, especially in young people. I think people, once they're really fed up, once they can't buy a house anymore, they can't get a job, once they can't be distracted anymore, I think there will be this conservative swing where people like the pendulum will come back. And I do think there's a chance that we can see a PPC government one day where we can see a stronger conservative party and things can get better, but it needs to happen fast. Like I think if you're, a young person looking to get into politics, you want to make a change, you, you can actually do it. It's almost like politics belongs to those who just show up every day. It's like if you just show up every day and you care about something and you just push for it, you can make a real change. And I would encourage anybody who's upset with the state of their country to do that. And I think it's possible. So I don't think all hope is lost, but if we're going to make a change, it needs to happen fast, because some of these things, it's like an overflowing sink. It's like you can't undo it. It's like if it goes too far, it's very hard to undo. So we need to act very quickly. But yeah, I am optimistic that one day we can see the trend reversed and we can go back towards a great country again.
And how can people follow you on social media?
Well, you can follow me on my Twitter. Let me check it. I've just changed my handle a couple times, but you can follow me on Twitter at Logan 88 underscore underscore. Pretty ugly username, but yeah, maybe I'll try and get a new one. But yeah, you can definitely follow me on Twitter. I'm trying to grow my Twitter audience. It's kind of fun. I like Twitter, or X.
All right, sounds good. And do you have a website or anything? If you don't,
I
it's
don't have a
okay.
website. No,
It's a work in progress. All right,
it's a work
Logan.
in progress. Yeah.
I thank you very much for coming on. You're clearly a very strong candidate, and I'm expecting good things from you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Payman, and best of luck with the show going forward, and we'll keep in touch.
Sounds good, Logan. And I'm just gonna hold you over until after the show.
Okay.
Thanks.